Brother, I'm going, run a wild Hulk Hogan. If I like it's a moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. Cause lately I've been seeing stars, trying to kick out on this joy cord. But it's no holds barred, middle fingers like I'm stone cold.
And what is up, ladies and gentlemen? This is WeTooDeep. This is another episode of the Slappin' Meat Wrestling Podcast. Let's dive right on into it. Before we dive into any of the wrestling conversation, as always, go to that QR code in the corner. That takes you to the WWE shop. I think Becky Lynch got a new shirt now. Go cop her merch through that link. At the same time, you support us here at the Slappin' Meat Wrestling Podcast. Also, new link in the description. Another way to support us. There's a website known as DH Gate. If you guys know about it, you know, to be completely honest, it's basically, you know, a place you can basically get like cheaper, sort of like Chinese knockoffs. Like they're not the real product. Like you can go and get like NFL jerseys for like $15. Right, so they're the cheaper, like Chinese knockoff jerseys. But hey, sometimes when you can't afford the $150 NFL charges for their uniforms, right? And for the most part, they all look the same. Just depends on, right? Now I will just a quick preface because I've ordered from DH Gate before. I mean, you can get like Gucci and like name brand stuff, but like they're the knockoff version. But no one's really gonna tell because it does look pretty similar. And you can get that for cheaper. Like, hey, go. That link's in the description as well. I just shared it in the Discord right before I started recording this. And so you can definitely go and check that out. As well as junkyardmediagroup.com. And then of course, you know, with it being Friday, go back to the Beyond the Junkyard Media Group YouTube. That link for their show is in the description as well. They just did their episode. I actually didn't watch this week, so I have no idea what they talked about. I'll be completely honest. But that's always a good time on Thursdays. But with that, long enough intro. Let's get into this show. You could tell by the title, it's final thoughts heading into WrestleMania weekend. So the question then you guys can ask is, well, don't you have a show next week? Why don't you do your final thoughts next week? Let me tell you, because we got a busy week next week in terms of prediction shows. Tuesday night, we're gonna welcome the Beyond the Junkyard crew. On the show, they're gonna help us do our WrestleMania predictions. Right, that's Tuesday show. That's all Tuesday show gonna go ahead and announce it to the world. We won't be doing questions from the Discord next week because we got a lot to cover in just predicting WrestleMania. At the moment, there's 9 matches. I'm assuming there's going to be a 10th added tonight. With Jade Cargill showing up in some way, shape, or form. So I'm assuming there's going to be 10 matches. That just makes sense. 5 a night. And then, of course, we always got to do, you know, Thirsty Tuesday. So it's basically going to be predictions on Thirsty Tuesday, right? So that in and of itself is going to take up the hour and a half of the show with the 4 of us, you know, giving our opinion. So that is the plan for Tuesday. Next Friday, we will be doing my NXT Stand and Deliver predictions. With me being the big NXT guy, I really didn't want, you know, Wavy D doesn't really necessarily watch NXT every week. I'm sure he'll be watching Stand and Deliver. But, you know, those predictions will be next Friday. However, sort of to jump right into the content I have planned for today, this is where we're going to start. I always watch NXT Friday morning when I wake up right before I start recording this show. Right, I record during NXT on Tuesdays, right, and so I record the show. And so there's a couple points from this episode that I want to talk about, that I want to bring up, sort of my final thoughts heading into this weekend. One about a match happening that weekend, and then another thing that happened that I want to sort of talk about, and sort of the reaction to it that I've sort of gathered. And that is Ridge Holland. So Ridge Holland comes into the ring, basically announces he's retiring from in-ring competition in a very compelling speech about how he feels like he's hesitating, and he's not, he's worried about injuring himself or injuring someone else, and that he hears the comments and right, and it's done an effect on his mental health, right? And typically these type of promos, I sort of just roll my eyes at, because this whole crisis we live in current America, where like everything and everybody has a mental illness, and we need mental health days at school because school's apparently too hard now. Like I roll my eyes at that, right? I think our generation has gotten too soft and too comfortable with how easy life is in America, that we really don't understand actual struggle, right? And but understanding Rich Holland's sort of situation, where like this dude comes in and basically gets thrown to the wolves, and yeah, he's hurt a lot of people. He basically ended Big E's career. But here's the thing, right? Big E holds zero animosity towards Rich Holland, right? And I'm sure Big E has even told him, bro, it's not your fault. It happens, right? But the fans have basically bullied this dude, assuming this is real, right? And assuming this isn't some work, and we'll talk about that in a minute, right? Assuming this is real, the fans have basically bullied Rich Holland into retirement. And I don't feel as a fan we should react that way. I don't think we should ever make someone feel like their job is. There's no reason Rich Holland should have to feel like the fans hate his guts. Like I know he got death threats and all, like, bro, it's not that serious, right? It's really not that serious. We should never respond to someone that way because we don't necessarily like them, right? Or their character, or yeah, he messed up, he made a mistake, right? But let's just be real. This is a work. This is a work. This is like, this has, Mark Henry fake retirement written all over it, right? But can sites like Fightful, and all these, and like Sportskeeda and all of these things on the socials, can y'all stop ruining the whole thing? So I watched it, and I immediately, so I stay off of wrestling, NXT, like Twitter and all of that. Like if I see anything about NXT, I quickly scroll past it until I watch the show, right? And so I went and looked up sort of like the last couple days of what the talk around it was, and like a site says like Fightful confirms through someone in WWE that this is indeed a storyline. Okay, well, can you let us live? Like that's why y'all don't enjoy the product, because y'all always trying to prove something's a work instead of just letting yourself get worked, right? If Rich Holland didn't, if you've been around the business long enough, if you've watched the wrestling long enough, you understand that this is probably an angle. But do y'all not want to sort of like suspend that disbelief and sort of want to believe in what the product is selling you? Like I sat here and watched this promo, and he gave a damn good promo about why he's retiring, and you start to feel for him, right? And you're like, oh man, he's retiring. Can you not just let the fans sit in that feeling? There's so many people. Did he really retire? Is this right? Let them sit in that, rather than trying to go out and be the first one to say, oh, this is a work. Hey, this is just storyline, guys. No, let us sit in the fact that he just retired. And it doesn't really affect me because I watch wrestling different than a lot of people. So, like, I'm going to live in the kayfabe. But there's a lot of people who don't recognize that wrestling can be enjoyed that way. That all they've grown up watching is the product, and then jumping on Twitter and social media ruining everything that TV's trying to sell you. Right? Can we let WWE tell us a story? Right? This is right, and the problem with this is it's because a lot of these fans don't like storytelling in their wrestling. They like, they like, 60% of the show being matches with zero build and zero story, right? And we'll get to that point in a minute. That's what we call foreshadowing, right? But yeah, so if Rich Holland's done, bro, thank you for what you've given us. Have I been your biggest fan? No. I'll immediately say that I haven't been the biggest fan of Rich Holland. I thought there was some potential there. I thought he got progressively better the more experience he got in the ring. I don't blame him for injuring Big E. I blame a lot of other people, including Rich Holland, right? He's not the only one to blame. I don't think the spot should have happened. I've been very open about that. I don't see a reason why on TV you have to start doing dangerous shit like what was going on. We also have to, assume that at some point Big E probably weakened his neck with all the. And I've said numerous times before Big E broke his neck, Big E used to do that jump, the sort of like suicide dive over the top rope, and he would always smash his neck on the barricade. And I said for years before his neck broke that he's going to break his neck doing that move. And part of me wants to be like, we can't fully blame Rich Holland. At what point did Big E potentially, weaken his neck? Right? Because the more, every time you hit it, it's getting weaker, right? It's sort of like if I took a car and repeatedly ran into it, into like a concrete wall, eventually the concrete wall is going to cave in because of it's going to be, compromised. So I can't fully blame Rich Holland. I can't. Big E took zero concern for his neck every time he jumped over the ropes. He's too big to be doing that shit. Right? And so with that being said, let's move forward to the other, like my thoughts right now going into Stand and Deliver on Trick and Melo. This is the one match that I really want to talk about right now before next week's show. I'll give a prediction for it next week. But as for the match itself, this match, I'm 100% sold that this is going to be the greatest NXT match of all time. Better than Bayley and Sasha. Better than anything Ciampa or Gargano or Undisputed Era gave us. This is going to be the biggest, most important, and the greatest NXT match of all time. Because this is why I say this. The build to it, the story behind it, the way they're presenting it. This is the only time ever in an NXT match that I believe that this match, the way it's been built, could be held at a WrestleMania and still be important. This is getting a WrestleMania build. I believe that rather than putting it on Stand and Deliver at 11 a.m., if they just wait another 8 hours to WrestleMania starts and put Trick Melo to start the show for WrestleMania, that would blow the roof off of Lincoln Financial Field. I feel that means a little more, in my opinion, right? We're building this idea that Trick and Philly go together. Well, that's because, so for y'all who don't know, I don't want to ruin the story because I just talked about not ruining the story, but Trick Williams played for the Eagles, right? And he at least for the practice squad for a little bit. I think it was their Super Bowl winning year. He was on the practice squad. I could be wrong about the year, but I know he was in the practice squad for the Eagles. And I think it would be very cool to have Trick win this match or have this match in the greatest NXT match of all time in the very stadium that his NFL career took place in. I think that would be pretty damn epic. But it's going to happen at Stand and Deliver, and it's going to be the greatest match. It should be the main event. And they're giving all the good storytelling to this story right here. This is the build of Stand and Deliver to me. Most important match, right? Of NXT history will be this match. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's going to be my early favorite for match of the year. Just the build to it. I already know. Like, it's still a week away, and I already know they're going to outperform all expectations. They're going to meet what I'm expecting for this match. Trick understands how important this is. Melo understands how important this is. Just like as the people playing the characters, they're not going to give us a weak performance, right? And what I like about it is that this is like they're treating Trick Williams sort of like Rocky, dude. And they're building him. I think Trick Williams is the biggest babyface in the company rather than Cody Rhodes. Like Cody Rhodes doesn't scream biggest babyface. When you got someone like Trick Williams, who is a lot more lovable to me. Like Cody Rhodes he's annoying. Like I want Trick Williams to win this match, right? And that's what you should want out of your babyface. And maybe it's because Cody's going against Roman. And I'll be honest, I'm a little biased because Roman's my favorite active wrestler right now. So maybe it's that bias, but like Cody Rhodes is just annoying. His character is annoying. Right? Like Junkyard James tried to use this thing like Cody Rhodes is the same as he was in AEW, as if I hadn't been calling that out since the day Cody Rhodes debuted. But I'm not blaming WWE for that. That's Tony Khan's decision for not copywriting that character. But I also blame Cody. Like, Cody, I get it. You got yourself over with this American Nightmare shit, but change it up. Like, all the promos are the same as AEW. This whole situation's the same as AEW. I mean, the only thing that hasn't happened is him saying, if I lose this match, I'm never going to fight for the world title again. I was kind of expecting that to happen. Right? I think Trick Williams is the biggest babyface in WWE right now. He's a lovable character that the entire crowd can get behind. I don't think the entire crowd is behind Cody Rhodes. There's part of us here who want him to lose because he is so annoying and he is so, it's easy to go against him because his character is just this big giant baby, cries all the time, right? And maybe I'm just biased. Maybe it's just me, right? I feel like a lot of the fans that are going to be cheering for Cody don't really like Cody. It's the same situation that LA Knight was in, and that, everyone that sort of has gone against Roman Reigns. It's that same situation where it's because it's against Roman Reigns that so you're going to get cheered for, right? And sort of like, if you want to make someone a big baby face, right? The same reason Sammy got over that Jey Uso, that Jey Uso, we'll talk about him to end the show here in a minute, or end this segment of me just going over some things. But the reason Jey Uso is as over as he is as a babyface is because he went against Roman Reigns, who was the giant heel, right? Like, we got to give Roman some credit for that, right? The reason Sammy was over, Kevin Owens was over, anyone who steps to Roman Reigns gets over as a babyface because the crowd just wants to see Roman lose. And it's not necessarily that they're over, but they just want to see Roman lose, right? And so we're seeing that with LA Knight, who sort of cooled off. Fans still cheer for him, fans still like him. But that like call for him to be world champion, well, that's over, because once he faced Roman Reigns and then you realized he wasn't going to be there, and a lot of fans who enjoyed him, they sort of stopped caring. Some the fans like me who never really saw anything in LA Knight, but thought it would be cool for him to win something. Like I never thought he would be Roman. Like I feel like there's still an easy pathway to get LA Knight over, and that's just to make him US champion. But what do I know? But anyway, again, Trick Melo, I believe, should be on WrestleMania. I thoroughly believe it. I think to make NXT feel important, to give them a match that is bigger than Stand and Deliver on WrestleMania weekend, Trick versus Melo, they're both going to the main roster anyway. Like, Trick Williams is one of those characters, one of those guys right now who's so beloved by the entire universe that he doesn't need the NXT champion. He can go and be implanted into SmackDown or Raw immediately, and people will be behind him. People know who he is. He's sort of, cool again. Like we talk about, like, we talked last week about, or last episode, about wrestling being cool, and is it cool? And Trick is sort of giving it some credibility to people who maybe wouldn't watch the show. Just as his presentation is unique. And I think Trick Williams is cool, right? I don't think wrestling as a business is cool. I stated that on Tuesday, but I think there are certain characters who are cool. I think Trick Williams is cool. I think Trick Williams has some sort of credibility, to the part of the, citizenship that doesn't watch wrestling, because it is kind of lame. Like, Trick Williams gives it that credibility. I think Obafemi, his presentation is cool as shit. Guys like on the main roster, like, of course The Rock is cool, but that's just because he's the biggest pop culture icon of this generation. And so I think wrestling is becoming cool. I don't think it has been ever cool. And to sort of continue that argument, it's because, like, the Attitude Era, who was the main crowd in the Attitude Era? Right? It wasn't like, it was always like the outcast of society. Right? And I'm speaking as someone who's in that group, right? Because it was the 90s, right? And at the time, like, you didn't get the big pop stars, right? Like Cyndi Lauper. Who's Cyndi Lauper, right? She's a celebrity. Rock, that punk rock sort of like counterculture, right? And you get, like, even at the time in the 90s, like, hip hop was still counterculture, and it was like punk, and it was always the counterculture that WWE presented itself to. It was never what was, at the time, like, the biggest, like, pop culture genre was like you would never get someone like Shania Twain or Garth Brooks on WWE. And those were the biggest artists of the 90s, because country music was king in the 90s. That was the biggest genre in music in the 90s. Hip hop was still counterculture. Hip hop was still sort of underground, especially with like NWA and that style of rap sort of taking over, right? And so, and then, rock has never been like the biggest genre ever, right? Especially like the fringe that WWE, with the punk and the alternative and stuff like that. WWE has never been catered to pop culture in the mainstream, right? They've always had the fringe sort of, Cyndi Lauper, even someone like Mike Tyson. Like, Mike Tyson's weird counterculture, right? And yeah, sure, Muhammad Ali's world renowned, but like, I don't think that really drew many people to the product because they weren't watching already. I think, Wavy D had an argument for maybe like the 70s or 80s and how popular wrestling was. But at that same time, like, still, again, you weren't getting like the big pop stars of the 70s, or you were getting the counterculture, right? That's always what wrestling was catered to, is this fringe counterculture, who enjoys the circus known as professional wrestling, right? And so I don't ever really necessarily think wrestling was cool to a mainstream audience. I think it's slowly becoming that way as hip hop becomes more popular and more mainstream. Like, hip hop has really switched over the last 2 or 3 decades. Hip hop has become the most popular genre. It is the mainstream now, right? Hip hop can't present itself as counterculture because it is culture. It is the culture making genre of this generation. And so, same thing with, punk sort of died out, rock has sort of died out, to be honest with you. But there's a reason why, WrestleMania is getting Meek Mill, dude, which popped me a little bit because I like Meek. But I don't know, dude, like, wrestling's becoming cooler now because what they were presenting it themselves to in this counterculture, that counterculture sort of became the culture itself, right? Everyone's sort of now part of that counterculture. And to sort of give an example of that, like, I remember being in like middle school, high school, 10, 15 years ago, and we would just completely, me and my friend group would just completely, like, I don't want to say bully, but we would, like, every time we saw someone talking about anime, we would sit there and be like, bro, that's boring. Like I would make fun of people who watched anime, or people who I remember I think it was middle school or something, people would like trade Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I was never a part of that. Like I thought it was the weirdest thing ever. And I still think anime is pretty weird, but like, anime is culture now. Everyone watches anime, right? Everyone talks about anime now, right? You're almost counterculture to not watch it. I still think it's pretty weird, but like, that's how culture has sort of shifted to where the things that used to be fringe, sort of like outcast things, have now become sort of shifted over into the pop mainstream culture. And so I think wrestling has the ability to become cool to the mainstream culture because their audience is now what's participating in creating culture, right? So I hope I explained that properly. This episode, just to sort of clarify what I meant by that, because I'm sure some of y'all were probably confused by what I meant by wrestling has never been cool. So I think it's becoming cool, but I don't think it's ever been mainstream cool. But let's talk about, that now that I got those out of the way, let's talk about the other show. So Wednesday night, watched AEW, and I want to put this caveat here. I mentioned on Tuesday that I watched Raw while playing Madden. So like, Raw was on, but it was sort of background noise. Well, I watched AEW. I watched Dynamite the same way. Dynamite was on, but I was playing Madden, right? And it's important because, I'm watching the same way, right? And so I got some things to talk about this Dynamite. And I think the numbers speak in my favor. I'm going to give you the numbers here in a minute. But my general premise is this. That show's boring as shit, dude. Boring as shit. So I have some things to ask Tony Khan. I know, Tony, that we had our conversation last week, but I have some things to ask you. You realize that a lot of your audience, as soon as your show turns on at 8 o'clock and the ratings start recording, right, and they're flipping around and like, we got, 1 point whatever million people. You do realize that a lot of that is from the people who are watching Big Bang Theory, probably mindlessly watching it, all the reruns that come on before, and probably in their phones, not paying attention. And they watch about 1 or 2 minutes getting recorded as watching because they're not paying attention to the TV. right? So you realize that you have about a subsection every week of about 300,000 to 400,000 people who apparently that's, because they get recorded as starting to watch the show during the first 15 minutes, and then they disappear. You lose them almost immediately after about 15 minutes. If I was running your show and I recognized that I had that runover from Big Bang Theory that stayed for my show, I would do something to try to hold their interest, to at least stay for another segment or two, because most smart people, when they count the ratings, right? So here's how you should really count the ratings. Don't count the first 15 minutes and don't count the last 15 minutes or any run over after that. Here's why. I don't know what show comes on after AEW, but a lot of people watch TV the same, and it's, I got to turn to this TV show. I got to turn to this channel. If the show starts at 10, I got to get here at 9:58 or whatever. Like for me, when Raw comes on, I have USA on at 7:55. 5 minutes before Raw comes on, I have USA Network on, right? And a lot of people watch TV the same. And so take away the first 15 minutes where people are watching Big Bang Theory and don't turn the channel, and take away the last 15 minutes when people want to watch what comes on after AEW and they have the channel on and they're just doing random things or scrolling through their phone until their show comes on. Right? So take away those two 15-minute periods of time, that 30-minute interval, the first 15 and last 15. And you're left with what? An hour and a half. Average that hour and a half, that middle hour and a half and that's your true rating. That's your true rating. That's how Jim Cornette does it. I actually like him doing it that way. And the numbers are going to be in my favor when I say this here, Tony. You had the perfect opportunity to keep these fans who are watching Big Bang Theory a little bit interested. But instead, here's how you start the show, right? You have Excalibur screaming, "It's Wednesday, you know what that means." Hardly intelligible what he was even saying because he's screaming like a mark. And then you go straight into Will Ospreay's entrance. And I'm not taking anything away from Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay is one of the greatest wrestlers active right now. I've said that numerous times over the last 6 months. But then he's fighting some guy from New Japan who we don't know, with no story buildup. And so you know what I typically would have done if I didn't have plans to watch the whole show, because I really just wanted to see what was going on, and all of that. But I typically would have just swapped the channels. And a lot of people would have, a lot of people who were probably watching Big Bang Theory probably looked up from their phone and saw Will Ospreay fighting some random Japanese guy, two guys that the American audience has no idea who it is, and they flipped the channel. Right? You see this company who's supposed to be like the second biggest company in the world in this industry, and you see them in Montreal, Quebec City, and you see them in a half-empty arena with like less than 4,000 people there, and you said, this is a crap show, and I'm watching two guys who made their names in New Japan who have zero American audience recognition, and you turn the TV off. That's what most people would do who aren't your normal AEW fan. So Tony, you know what you should do for these fans who maybe don't watch regularly? You know what you should do? Do what Monday Night Raw does every week, what SmackDown does every week. Start the show with the review of what happened last week. Start the show with the review of what happened on Saturday. How even, like, you don't even promote Collision half the time on this damn show. And so give us a review. Let us catch us up in case we missed an episode. Right? But you put on, and then this match goes on for like 30 minutes. Like I said, I was playing Madden, so I don't play defense. I play 15-minute quarters, only offense, right? If you play defense, you a different level of Madden, I'm not playing you. But I don't play to try to be like the greatest player ever. I play to win and to have some fun. And so I play offense only. And so I was playing this game, and I could typically, because I play 15-minute quarters and I don't play defense regularly, every now and then, like if it's a key situation where like I need a stop to win the game, then yeah, I'll play defense. But I could typically play a game in about 20 to 25 minutes. Just playing offense at 15-minute quarters. And so I finished this game that I was playing, and I looked over at the TV that Dynamite was on, and I said, damn, y'all are still fighting? It had been like 20, 25 minutes. And that's too long for a match to me. Like they were trying to like sell this as like a dream match, and I had no idea what was going on. It had no purpose to me other than you showed Ospreay losing to this dude 7 years ago in New Japan. But that's the story. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, you got to do better than that. You got to try to hold some sort of like. And so I've made my mind up. Here's why I don't like AEW. It's not that they don't tell compelling stories, because they don't. That's part of it. It's not that 90% of everything they do runs around Tony Khan's, dad's money, Shad Khan's money, and all the stars they try to buy their fans, basically. It's not that there's not a single name on the roster right now that's important enough for me to care about. Here's why I don't like AEW, plain and simple. Here's the only reason I'm going to give. You're so fucking boring, dude. It's boring. I would be bored if I had to watch that every single week. Like I choose not to be bored every week. Like your show is boring. And the numbers come out, and I think people agree with me. Because the numbers come out, you lose another 56,000 viewers this week. You're under 800,000. You're at like 754 or something like that. Right? In the weeks following adding Ospreay and Okada and Mercedes Moné, every single week you've lost viewers after that. Every single week. You spend all this money assuming the numbers that are being reported. We know we know Okada's making about what's the equivalent of about $4 million a year. We know Mercedes is being rumored, in the lower end around 6. And let's just assume Ospreay is getting similar money. Let's say he's making 3. Let's just pretend to know what he's making, and let's this. I'm not reporting anything. None of these dirt sheets. No one report that I'm any authority in this. I have no idea what he's making. I'm just going to guesstimate he's making similar money, and I'm gonna pick a number, and I pick 3. But let's just assume Tony Khan spending between these 3 superstars somewhere between 10 to $15 million a year on these 3 superstars, and all they've done since they've joined the program is tank the ratings. Can you explain it? This is not big business, Tony. It's stupid business. And you'd rather than fix that problem, you'd rather go and have a little Twitter war with Eric Bischoff. Tony, you're a mark, dude. You got to get over yourself. You got to get over yourself. You're a mark, dude. Why the ratings keep going down? The problem is Tony Khan. Right? The problem isn't the wrestlers. The problem really isn't the fans. It's Tony Khan. He can't get out of his own damn way. He thinks that if he pays enough people enough money to come, the fans will come and watch his show. And the statistics, the data, the actual game-driven data is telling us the complete opposite. But they'll sell out Double or Nothing in Vegas again because that's a hot market that they're always in. They'll sell out All In London, and he'll perpetuate this narrative that is the business is doing the best it's ever done, when every other rating in the most premier market in America, your average viewership continues to go down. Your average goer to the show. And Quebec's a typically hot market for wrestling, dude. And you could barely squeeze 4,000 people in that arena. Like, at what point do the fans not get embarrassed being in the like, if I bought a ticket, right? If I bought a ticket to AEW and half the arena was empty, I'd be embarrassed to be there, dude. Like, I remember when Collision came to Charlotte, and I bought the cheapest ticket I could possibly find. I was literally touching the ceiling in this small-ass arena right next to a hard cam. And, like, half the damn arena, the hard cam section, every section beside me for that half, the next half of the arena was empty. And you had like 3,000 people in there. Like, that's an embarrassing amount of, like that's crazy, dude. Because I've been in that same arena before when you've sold it out. But now you can't even, now you have to lock off half the stadium because there's no there's no demand for your tickets, dude. No one cares. Tony, fix the company. Get out of your way. You know, Tony, how you fix your company? Let someone else book for a minute. Let someone else make some stories. How about you just go sit in the office in Jacksonville and just be the CEO and mind the company, the day-to-day ops, right? So I'll use another example here in Charlotte, right? Carolina Panthers. David Tepper's the owner. He was so like hell-bent on managing day-to-day football operations, and the team just sucked, right? So they picked Bryce Young over CJ Stroud. Now, granted, I don't think CJ Stroud does as good in Carolina as he did in Houston, because Houston actually has a team built around it, right? The point that I'm trying to make is that David Tepper, he can't run a team. If you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you understand this, right? Because he used to be a part of that franchise, right? But David Tepper doesn't know how to run football. And so I told my friend who's a Panther fan, like, David Tepper needs to do one thing that will fix the entire team. The first thing he needs to do is he needs to step out of day-to-day football operations, hire a director of operations to do that for him. Guess what he did this year? Exactly that. And you know what's happening? The Panthers hired a great GM, a decent head coach. They're making great money moves on their roster right now because there's someone running day-to-day football operations who understands how to run football operations, who isn't just the guy with money who thinks that he can pay. You know, David Tepper's paying 4 coaches millions of dollars this year because he hired them for long-term contracts at large amount of sums of money, thinking that would get them victories, and then fire them before their contract's over. He's paying Matt Rule. I think Rivera's contract's over now. He's not paying him, but he's paying Matt Rule. He's paying the dude who was coach Frank Reich, and now he's paying the new guy. So at least 3 head coaches he's got to pay this year. 2 of them, did very little. Like, Frank Reich lasted 8 games, I think, before he got fired. And you're paying him large sums of money for the remainder of his contract. Right? Sometimes these owners, Tony Khan, just step back, be the CEO, be the owner. Hire someone to run day-to-day operations. Hire a booking team, Tony, and your company would look professional. You don't have to run everything. That fixes AEW's problem right there. The show's boring because Tony's booking what is exciting to him, and Tony Khan is a boring guy. He's goofy. He's boring. He thinks he's made it because he's got, people working for him that are like the biggest in the industry, like name-wise for the indies. He's just Eric Bischoff said it correctly. He's just a money mark running a company. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. It's boring. The show is boring, dude. Right? And the numbers come out about what the show, and then people do this all the time. And AEW has the losing formula in this, right? So people like to talk about, AEW shows more wrestling. Well, is that a winning formula? Because let's talk about what Wednesday's episode had on it. Right? Matches, including picture-in-picture, 57% of the show were matches, right? Now, if you include the commercials, not picture-in-picture, that's another 10%. So that's, 67? You include the entrances, that's another 11%. So you're talking like 21, and 57 is 70, 78. 78% of the show. 78% of your show is either an entrance, a commercial, or a match. 78. That's 3/4 of your show has zero to do with building any type of story. 78% of your episode this week, Tony, had zero to do with building storyline and everything to do with. That's not the winning formula. Why is Raw and SmackDown so hot right now? Why is it the best one? Well, NXT is still the best thing to me, but that's a different argument. Why is WWE the best product it's ever been? And I'm going to say that with full confidence. It's the best it's ever been. Better than the Attitude Era. Like last Monday's episode of Raw was the best episode I can remember of Monday Night Raw. Why is that? Because that episode of Raw had 15% of the show matches and like 50, actually, I think it's about 40 to 50% of the show. It was like 34% commercials, which, that's going to happen. It's literally only an hour of the show, by the way. That's just over an hour of the 3-hour segment being commercials, which is how it's always been. That's sort of USA's thing too. They've got to make their money. But it's like 15% matches, and then if you add up the entrances and all of that, it's like 25-30% of the show is entrances and matches. But the rest of the show, we're talking like 45% of the show is either that brawl with Rock and Cody or some backstage or in-ring promo, and it's interesting and it's building storyline towards a greater event. Like Ospreay versus whatever the fuck his name was should have been a pay-per-view match, right, on April 21st, because that's the way you treated it. But if you're going to give me a pay-per-view match on weekly TV, why the fuck am I going to watch the pay-per-view? So that's why I've always been in this mindset that I don't know. And this is coming back to the next topic here in a minute. This is how I'm going to sort of transition to the next topic. I've always been in this mindset. I don't want my world champion. I don't want my big guys, my main eventers on weekly TV every week wrestling. Why? Because it ruins the prestige of when they actually wrestle. So let's move into the next topic. There's this big sort of thing that, The Rock's showing up more than Roman Reigns. Where's Roman? Why is Roman not showing up? It's pretty fucking simple why Roman's not here. Because he's never here. That's his character, dude. Like Roman Reigns has zero concern about Cody Rhodes because I don't know if you guys remember this. About 365 days ago, he beat Cody Rhodes. This all comes down to, do you all understand the character of Roman Reigns? Do you understand who Roman Reigns is? Do you understand the gimmick? Because I feel like a lot of people don't understand this, and I've done full episodes explaining who Roman Reigns' character is. Like I've exhausted that conversation. But people are sitting here acting surprised that they don't know why Roman Reigns doesn't show up to TV to confront Cody every single week. Like we need to see that every week. We don't. Right, this isn't setting up some big Rock versus Cody feud. No. Rock's doing Roman's bidding. But it's also personal for the Rock. Like Roman isn't scared of Cody Rhodes because he has already defeated Cody Rhodes. So it's in Roman's mind, he's not relevant enough or worth his time. That's the gimmick. I just explained Roman Reigns' character to you for the last 4 years. He only shows up when you're relevant and worth his time. That's literally what he's done for the last 4 years. Now, why is The Rock showing up and taking a personal attack against Cody Rhodes? Because Cody Rhodes offended The Rock. Cody Rhodes called out The Rock's family at that press conference. And that was a personal offense to The Rock. You know who it didn't offend? It didn't offend Roman. It offended The Rock. So The Rock is doing The Rock's bidding, and then at the same time he's doing Roman Reigns' bidding. Right? So Roman doesn't need to be there. Roman isn't playing second fiddle. He's playing his character the way it's meant to be played. As a guy who doesn't see Cody Rhodes as relevant enough for him to spend his time, right? He doesn't feel that Roman Reigns doesn't feel that Cody Rhodes is worth his time because he's already defeated him. He's not worried. He's not worried. He's got it covered. He's got the bloodline there, right? Roman Reigns is cocky that it's going to be bloodline rules, right? Because they're going to win on Saturday. And then bloodline rules on Sunday, Roman Reigns will win because it's bloodline rules, right? And I got to thinking, like, that's how we all feel that this match is going to go. But part of me wonders, what if it's not bloodline rules? I feel like that's the bigger story. That Cody and Seth win on Saturday. And Roman has to go it alone. I don't think that's how they're booking it. I think I don't think you put in the idea in the fans' head of bloodline rules and then don't give them bloodline rules. But I think the bigger story would be having it be Cody versus Roman with the bloodlines not allowed. I think that would be a bigger story piece, especially if what I think is going to happen happens. And I'll go into detail with that here in a minute. But yeah, it's pretty simple why Roman's not on TV. You just got to understand the gimmick. Another thought that I'm coming in that I read somewhere that Becky Lynch said that Seth Rollins felt disrespected with CM Punk returning because he was not made aware of CM Punk's return prior to the event. And Seth, I just got to ask you a question. Do you know what the word surprise means? Like, there's no reason to be disrespected. WWE wanted to do everything possible to make sure that them bringing back CM, and from my understanding, like, this thing took place like 3 days before the event. Like, it was literally last minute that they got CM Punk to even agree to come back. And even so, even if it happened months ago before that event, right? Seth, who the fuck do you think you are that you deserve to be known that CM Punk's coming back? They wanted to protect their business. You don't get to be... It's not disrespectful that they didn't let you know. They're protecting their business. They wanted pure reaction. And you know what that happened? They got a pure reaction out of Seth Rollins. And you know what they did? They turned it into a storyline. because they wanted to protect their business. Unfortunately, Punk got hurt. But I think it's actually a fortunate thing for us because I think we're getting the better title match between Drew and Seth, because I think the better match would be Drew versus Punk. This Drew versus Punk rivalry is going to be banging because Drew proved that he can handle Punk. He can go step to step with Punk on the mic. I think Drew is better than Rollins on the mic, personally. And so I think Drew and Punk's promos will be a lot better because I think Drew's going to win it. Punk's going to come back, and I think that's going to be the match heading into SummerSlam. I personally believe that. So I just wanted to touch on that. But my next WrestleMania sort of thought going into, the weekend prior is the idea that we haven't seen MJF in about 4 months. Well, it's about 3 months at this point. I think about 3 months to today. Or so. World's End was like what, the 30th of December. So it would be January, February, all of March. So it would be 3 months tomorrow. That we haven't seen MJF. And I know he was healing some sort of injury and getting healthy. There's this rumor going around he's showing up next weekend. And I don't know if I believe it. I'm not trying to bring up or any hype train about it. So there's a lot of people who want to sell this because they feel like MJF is too late, that he joined too late. They want to insert him in the main event. And I just want to sort of correct this line of thinking. As I've always said, MJF has never been considered a main event player in WWE. I don't believe it. I believe that they've always considered him top mid-card, right? Sort of like Miz level character, right? He can run around with the IC title or the US title, maybe get an opportunity at World Heavyweight Championship, but he's never on Roman Reigns level. He's not there, right? I've always felt that he was Miz, not Roman Reigns, in terms of like where he's at on the roster. And so I don't think that there's really a place for MJF. So that's why I don't want him to show up. I'd be happy if he did, but I really don't think he needs to show up because there's not a place for him on the roster. He's not a main eventer on this roster yet. He's in the same level as Miz and LA Knight where the fans are going to love him, but he's just not at that level to be Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes. He's just not there. But if he shows up, let me tell you something. I'm going to laugh my ass off. Because in 2019, when this company started, I told people Cody's going back and at least one or two other of the original cast of characters were going to go to WWE within 5 years. Right? And I wasn't talking about the Bucks or Omega or Hangman, because I already knew at that point that this was their money. This is the only time they were ever going to be over and able to be main eventers. But I was looking at people like, I didn't know their roster. They didn't really have a roster at the time, but I knew Cody was going back. I knew exactly what was in Cody's mind when this started. I knew Cody was going back. And I knew eventually some of the younger talent they brought in would shift gears. And I think Starks is on his way to WWE. I think even Daniel Garcia's raised his stock enough that I think he gets offered and I think he jumps ship. But MJF is one of those that I've always thought would jump ship eventually. I used to think Hobbs and Wardlow, but I think they've sort of bought into the hype of AEW. And I think they'll stay there. But I think someone like Starks, someone like MJF, someone like Daniel Garcia, I think we'll see them in WWE within the next year or so. I don't know when their contracts end, but I mean, if MJF shows up, he shows up. It is what it is. I'm not really going to necessarily care. He's there. He's going to be pushed into a roster that's heavily bloated when you get a guy like Carmelo and Trick and now Braun Breaker, and you got a bunch of other guys like Oba Femi, right, down there that they're developing that are going to be the future of this business. Like, I don't see a place for MJF, so I think for his sake, just wait till AEW Dynasty on April 21st, and just debut back there. That's probably your best bet if you want to remain relevant in the business, MJF. That's what I really got to say. So I mentioned Jey Uso, and so I have this theory. Jey Uso, I believe, is going to rejoin the Bloodline. I just got this feeling that Jey Uso is going to rejoin the Bloodline. He's going to have this match with Jey. Jay and Jimmy are going to have this match. Jimmy's going to win. I think Jimmy's going to win. That's my prediction. I would do that prediction here early. And I think in the process of it, Jey Uso sort of snaps back. They embrace at the end of it. I think it's going to happen on night one. And then during the main event of night two, whether it's Bloodline rules or whether it's not. So this is why I was trying to maybe pitch that the bigger story is that the Bloodline can't show up. And so Cody's getting beat down and Jay's music hits. Cody's getting beat down, Jay's music hits, and Roman's sort of scared because now Jay's coming for retribution. Right? And he gets in the ring, he stares down Roman. Cody gets up, and Jay super kicks Cody. Right? Of course, there'd be a ref bump before this, right? Ref out, ref bump, ref out. Jay's music hits, and it looks like it's all going to turn around on Roman. Like, Jay's going to come and start mud stomping Roman. The same, like, Roman's going to lose the same way he's been beating everybody else, right? He stares down Jay, starts talking about family. You don't do this to family, right? And Jay looks like he's getting ready to super kick Roman. And Cody's getting up, confused, not sure what's happening. And then a super kick to Cody, which then sets up a spear. Ref gets up, 1, 2, 3. Roman retains. And Jay's back in the Bloodline. That is what I see happening. That's what I see happening. That's why I would push it to not be Bloodline rules. I mean, you could do that same type of story in the Bloodline rules match, so it doesn't necessarily matter. But I think it would mean more if it was not Bloodline rules and Roman sort of left alone, and then it looks like the optics is that Jay's coming to help Cody and everyone that, right, and Jay's getting the revenge on Roman, right? But he's actually getting the revenge on Cody. Right. So I think that makes a lot more sense. And so that's sort of what I'm hoping happens, to be honest with you. And then last thing before we jump into our WeTooDeep top 10 is Alexa Bliss posted a picture on Instagram, I believe it was, saying that she's getting back at it. And that just makes me excited. My question, though, is where does she fit in this roster? Like I just said with the men's roster, this women's roster is bloated. Rhea, Becky, Tiffany, Roxanne's probably going to come up. You got Bayley, Io, Dakota. We got a very, very, very stacked roster right now for WWE. And I don't know where Alexa Bliss fits. I just don't. But I'm happy she's back. I think the rumor is that, a lot of people have this feeling she's coming back with Bo Dallas. I'd enjoy that. I really would. I think that would make some good storytelling. I think it would be good for all of us to see that sort of gimmick continue, even though we lost Bray. But we'll see. I'm happy that she's back at it, and she'll be back here soon. I'm assuming Alexa Bliss will probably be around Money in the Bank. But we'll see. We'll see. I can't wait for that to happen. And then before we get into WeTooDeep top 10, we got a lot of big time like television production for WWE. Like I know WWE Rivals with Roman Reigns on A&E's this weekend. You got the Bray Wyatt documentary. You got the new show on Roku channel that they're doing. I think John Cena's hosting. That's sort of like going through the life of being like an NXT recruit. And so there's a lot of stuff happening WrestleMania week for WWE. It's a big week next week, so look out for that if y'all want some TV to watch. But let's jump into our WeTooDeep top 10. No question of the week this week. But let's jump into our top 10. This week we're going to do top 10 rivalries in and it could be wrestling history, but I decided, most of them are WWE history. Now, I need to sort of preface this. I thought this was something that should have been assumed. But when I do this ranking, this isn't like me saying that I am the ultimate authority. This is just who I think it is, right? So like top 10 rivalries. This isn't me like doing an exhaustive list of the history of WWE. This is my top 10 favorite rivalries that I've seen, right? So now there's some here that, I didn't see, but that I've gone back and watched and I enjoyed, right? But this isn't like like I don't want people to come be like, "Oh, you forgot this feud." Well, maybe that feud's not something that I enjoyed. Right? And so this is subjective to me. So I don't want people to, like, especially like the last couple list, right? That's subjective to me and what I consider a good wrestler, right? Or a good tag team, right? So these are my top 10 rivalries, really for WWE. We're going to start at number 10. And I know that I've sort of talked trash about these three tag teams last week, but I don't think we could really have the sort of era that I grew up in tag team wrestling without this rivalry, and that is the Hardys versus the Dudleys versus Edge and Christian. I think this is a top 10 rivalry, even though I think that this rivalry in the TLC matches and the ladder matches, and I think the only reason people really liked these three teams were because they were extreme, but it was still a good rivalry, right? So number 9 is one that I didn't really see in its prime, but I have gone back and really enjoyed it, and that's Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. And I still think they sort of have beef after it. But this was a very good rivalry, happening around the time I was being born. So I think it does need to be on this list. Number 8 to me, y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes. I know it's only a year and a half, almost about 2 years in the making of a rivalry, and not much has really happened in that 2 years. But I really think that this is going to go down as a big rivalry. Cody versus Roman, right? I think I'm going to put that on my list as a rivalry that I've enjoyed. Number 7 is the Usos versus New Day, the top 2 tag teams ever. A reason it's lower on the list, because I think it's the greatest tag team rivalry of all time. But the reason it's low on this list is because at a certain point it did get monotonous at times. But anytime New Day and Usos are in the ring together in a tag match, I'm there to watch it. I'll pay money to see it. Number 6, one that I didn't see live, but again, you have to respect it. It's Hogan versus Savage. Number 5, The Authority versus Daniel Bryan. Like the build leading to WrestleMania 30. Chef's kiss, perfect. Between The Authority, that's being Triple H, Stephanie, versus Daniel Bryan. And granted, like Triple H did get the match against Daniel Bryan, but I think Kane was part of this as well. I think Orton was a part of The Authority. So The Authority versus Daniel Bryan was just a great storyline, a great rivalry, one that I think will hold forever and ever. Number 4, y'all be upset that this is low, but it's Austin versus Rock. Now, a lot of people are probably going to say this is the greatest greatest rivalry of all time. I disagree. But Austin versus Rock is definitely top 4. I think there's a more important Austin feud, and that is my number 3, and that's Austin versus McMahon. Right, Austin versus McMahon was what made the Attitude Era like unique and special, because it was like the first time ever that like the owner and promoter on a national brand on TV really had a character and got in the ring and wrestled, and it was sort of like it was fitting to this outcast group of people who wanted to, who had to work every day and really hated their boss and wished that they could be Austin and tell him to suck it, to shove it up there, right? Like, so I think that represented the Attitude Era a lot more than Austin versus Rock. And so Austin McMahon is the third best rivalry to me. And then the number 2 is John Cena versus CM Punk. A little bit biased because this is the era that I sort of grew up watching. But this was a fantastic rivalry. But my favorite of all time rivalry is John Cena versus Randy Orton. You put John Cena and Randy Orton, like, to the point that I believe John Cena and Randy Orton's retirement match needs to be the same match against each other. Like, when Randy Orton retires, I need John Cena to be the one to have that match, right? Because this is my favorite rivalry. This, like, you could have this match every single month on a pay-per-view and I'd pay to watch it. I just enjoy every time they're in the ring together. I do. So that's my top 10 rivalries. Thanks again for watching the Slapping Me Wrestling podcast. We got a big episode on Tuesdays. We do WrestleMania predictions with the Junkyard Gang, me, myself, Wavy D, Junkyard James, and K-Dog. Cody will be here on Tuesday on the Slapping Me Wrestling podcast.
Brother, I'm going run a wild Hulk Hogan. If I like get some moment.